We're live on LinkedIn. This is the new Data Dividend webinar series, speaking to business and data leaders about their data and AI investments. I'm Stephen Rennick, CEO and co-founder of Telores. And today I am joined by Ivo, who is managing partner for data at Specifc Group. So Ivo, thanks for joining us.
Hey there, Stephen. Happy to be with you and to discuss some of these interesting AI valuation and AI ROI topics today.
Yeah, and what's really cool is you've released a book recently that you co-authored called Finance Grade Data and AI Products, and in some ways, like, you're the perfect example for this webinar series, because you are literally talking about how to properly analyze AI and data investments, which is something which is seldom done. So I want to jump straight into a question about the book. I read it on a return train trip from Berlin to Warsaw a couple of months ago, and I thought it was really great read. It's an unusual book because it opens talking about Hannibal at Cannae, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And it's a story about how you win by changing the rules, not just by throwing more resources at a problem. What's the enterprise equivalent of that Hannibal mistake right now?
Right. So it's a good analogy. The enterprise equivalent of that was basically that scale your way out reflex, if you will. So basically throwing more headcount, more tools, God forbid, more governance layer to a data AI problem, and instead of rethinking the underlying business operating model. Most large organizations are fighting Roman style, right? Frontal assault, bigger budgets, just bigger teams, bigger platforms. If you want to do a platform transition, let's just throw 50 people at it instead of rethinking, it from like a more simpler, more leverage mindful way, which is basically changing the unit economics and how value gets created, right? So the Cannae lesson here is that structure and consistency beats mass. And that's exactly why I think most AI portfolio strategies, what are they missing right now? It always bugged me. This is the reason why Mario and I wrote the book, is that there's a huge disconnect between the overall transition to AI within enterprises and the value it creates. And most people that I've seen focus on the economics of individual use cases, and kind of the layer above, the layer where the CFO or the COO operate, is kind of left out. So what ends up happening, and what I think will end up happening this year for many, many companies, is that at fiscal year 26, there's not going to be any meaningful movement of the really the metrics that the CFO cares about, and effectively the board and CEO and the shareholders care about. And it's going to be just, we reduce headcount a little bit here and there. Maybe we streamline the license or two. But really, if you look at the balance sheet and compare it, if you look at P&L and compare it, if you look at cash flow and compare it, basically just added more cost for AI. And that's really that's a real possibility. I'm not saying it will be true for everyone, but when we were writing the book, we were thinking, how do we steer this portfolio of bets, which is the AI use cases, and how to be smarter about this, how to have tighter loops. We were influenced a lot by the OODA loop, and we're thinking, well, steering the portfolio as a classic IT project portfolio just does not work for AI. I didn't find anyone that talks about it like this, so I figured let's just dig into the details of it and write about it.
So you mentioned the MIT figure that a lot of people in the kind of data world were talking about recently, that most data and AI projects fail to meet expectations. Where is it that the failure is actually happening? Is it technology? Is it the business case, what you're just talking about? Or is it something else entirely? What's the missing connection between value and feasibility?
Right. So, well, the missing connection is because we talk about the this AI capability ladder in the book, and the missing value is that you can't just skip all the necessary steps, right? 95% of the projects fail to deliver value because they were never created with the value in mind that a CFO can measure, can see. They don't really map out properly, and they're not steered properly to affect that value. It's basically feel-good use cases, capabilities building here and there, maybe saving time of people. I mean, I'm talking about really production-grade use cases where actual development happens. I'm not saying get an Anthropic license and everyone uses Anthropic and and that didn't bring about any improvement. It obviously did. So I'm talking about where you actually have to commit resources of multiple months to develop something, to automate a process, to insert this non-deterministic component, to do an agentic setup where you would like to see a much bolder use case happening that will lower your cost or increase your output, and not just basic AI capability building. And all of the stuff that people say is true, right? Use cases are not geared for production by design. They're not bold enough. You see the list. Every department now would bring what we usually see at companies is, everyone has 50, 100. I've even seen 300 use case list. Maybe with bigger companies, there's a 500 use case list. But essentially, they're just, asked every department, what do you guys want in terms of AI? And everyone started, thinking about various things of various quality. And you just kind of roll them up, and then you have 100 use cases. And a few of those are actually geared to really change things. And it's for obvious reasons, right? Because everyone would not say, hey, my department and the next one actually don't make sense if we change the business processes such and such. So the answer to your question is it's multi-determined, but you can safely say that the companies were not ready for the execution on AI use cases that actually move the needles. Everyone was just thinking they're going to get a nicer tool to do X, Y, and Z that they were doing before, just a bit nicer, and maybe cheaper.
So before we jump into some of the framework that you've got in the book, I just one of the bits you kind of say at the start is that you're not, you sound a bit kind of skeptical about the agile at scale. That it's a contradiction in terms that you actually end up with more processes, more roles, but the same velocity. And that's kind of might sound a bit heretical to some people. So what have you actually seen when large organizations are actually trying to do agile at scale, which is way beyond startups like us?
Yeah, so agile, it's a great topic. I mean, I've done this from both sides, right? By being at let's say managing a large division at a bank, and working for large organizations. And what you see in practice, and this was evident 6-7 years ago in 2019, is that agile got captured by organizational politics, right? The original insight, small teams, fast feedback, working software, it just got buried under frameworks like SAFe. I mean, it's not great. Many of my clients use SAFe. I understand why they do it. We help them out. But essentially, waterfall reimposed with different vocabulary. In data and AI specifically, you ended up with 2-week sprints producing dashboards nobody asked for. Strategic questions are left unanswered. Data modeling is left out of the picture, or addressed differently. Agile at scale is optimized in practice for activity maximization. It's clearly not designed for value optimization. Like, this is never the case. And you can start, I know this might go into a very religious discussion with agile, but the idea was never to do it cheaper and better. And this is, by the way, why a lot of the fast organizations early on, they adopted agile. The boards saw that there's actually no real improvement within a year, and then said, we're not going to do this like this anymore. Whatever you guys were telling us as stories, it didn't show up in the numbers. Yeah. What are you talking about? You're closer to the client. We didn't see anything. And so it's a real contradiction. And to quote my friend Joe Rees, he has a great bit on this, and he said nobody ever did their best thinking in 2-week sprints, right? So
yeah, I like that.
That's also adds to it. So with data and AI, you really have to be mindful about two things. On the one hand, the speed is enormously quick. So you have to rethink and reevaluate your assumptions from like 3 months ago in terms of architecture. But for some things, you have to be deliberately slow. Like if you're actually doing data modeling for something that needs to be stable, that needs to be a system you would build upon, I mean, you can't just hack it quickly and fix it later in production. It has to require some thinking. So it never really applied. Agile never really applied to data and AI the way, it was meant for like building great mobile apps.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking for practical experience. I know that the literature, I know the frameworks, I know that there's interiorly a lot of discussion, but this is what you see on the ground, right? Yeah. So,
okay, and so let's jump into the book a little bit and some of the framework. You've got this so-called napkin test. So if your business case needs like a massive multi-tab spreadsheet, what is it actually telling you? Can you tell us about the napkin test?
Oh yeah, the napkin test is a great example of something we've seen in practice, especially with data platforms. Actually, when I was writing about this, I was thinking how people were implementing Snowflake and Databricks platforms. So basically, if you tell them, okay, what do you want to achieve? Like, what's the value of what you're doing? And then you start getting these qualitative items, which were like, well, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, but then show me the numbers. And then when you look at the numbers, you really see that no one understands the value drivers. And so the napkin test is kind of a forcing function, right? If you cannot articulate the expected value of an AI use case or data initiative on a single napkin, the back of a napkin, namely who benefits, what changes, and like what's the order of magnitude, you don't really have a business case. You have some sort of a rationalization exercise. Maybe you're good storytelling. Maybe you took a lot of storytelling with data classes or similar, and you can really articulate things that are not moving the needle but sound great. But yeah, the complexity of the spreadsheet is basically inversely proportional to the clarity of the thinking here, right? If you cannot say, I'm doing this, I want, let's say, invest 200K, and here's what I'm going to get. Don't kid yourself, you don't have a business case. You have some sort of a story. And so forcing you to think about this, if you could put it on a paper napkin, with the napkin test is a good litmus test, and I
mean, it applies. It's something that I must confess we struggle with at Telores sometimes, is quantifying that value without having to go into a massive kind of spreadsheet. So there's definitely something for us to take away there too.
Yeah, so this is what I saw, that the other frameworks and approaches that I've read about where people were measuring the value of data, like measuring the AI use cases, value and ROI is a term that gets thrown around. TCO is something you still hear about. It either seemed completely, buried in unnecessary detail, kind of missing the point, and not tied to any real way you'd measure it in the traditional non-data product development. Let's take a step back. If you manufacture a product, if I manufacture a phone, right? I know how every component is made, what it costs, what value does it add. I know the variable costs, I know the fixed costs, I know the overheads. I mean, all those things get tracked in the real economy. But when it comes to data and AI products, people just make shit up. It's stories. And that's the harsh reality. And the ones that are really good talkers make better stories than the ones that aren't. But it just bugged me. As a management accountant, also as an additional training, it always bugged me that everyone was talking about data products, but they weren't managing them like the costing of those products or like the expected returns. Like the whole thing just did not have this financial rigor to it.
Yeah.
It always bugged me. There's people who talk, and the more someone was talking about ROI, the less I saw any real, you know, I mean, if someone ever did an NPV calculation, that would have been, you know, even that would have been something to look at. But not even traditional DCF or NPV calculations were there. It's just basic kind of, here's the cost, here's the super sloppy, non-financially rigorous approach to collecting the value of and the expected benefits of those use cases. And this is kind of what drove us with Mario to think about, is there, like, how would we do this? Like, how would we frame this in our framework of quantifying some of those qualitative value drivers, because you'd still get like a number and you can plot it on a quadrant, on a chart, on a whatever. You can track it, you can measure it, and then for some of the financial parameters, just do it the way traditional management accountants would do it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You just have to speak the language of finance, and that's what we did with the book.
So talking about financial rigor in the language of finance, you argue that AI pilots should be treated like financial options, not like traditional projects. Can you, what does that actually mean in practice? What changes when you think of a pilot as like a call option? Right.
So this is also something that many people told me, well, they heard this before, and people just generally didn't like this approach in the past. I think now it applies very much to AI pilots. And the reason why you want to treat it as options is that in a traditional project, you assume you commit capital to deliver a known outcome, right? And this framing basically kills AI pilots or pilot projects because the variance is high and the outcomes are very uncertain. And also the architecture keeps changing very often, way quicker than before. Such that when you reframe this pilot as a call option, the logic is kind of flipping. You're paying a small premium, which is like the cost of the POC, to buy the right to scale if conditions are favorable. So you can scale it up or scale it down, but you basically allow yourself to experiment quicker. And then if the pilot fails, it still generates learning as a value, and it not as a waste byproduct.
I think that's the big difference, isn't it? It's thinking of failure as actually purchased information. Like you have paid for that
purchased information, exactly. If the option expired and is out of the money, then which is actually a perfectly normal financial outcome. It still gives you the vocabulary and the framing that you get something out of it, and also it gives you, honestly, with steering portfolios of options, it gives you the clarity and the ease to rebalance, to stop things that aren't working. What we've seen in practice is, people would create a chatbot, it would run they would spend like 9 months and like and then at the end of the day, they see now this is already deprecated. Actually, with the current technology, 1 year later, we could redo it in like 3 weeks, and it will have better quality and honestly be better geared to the newer modern investments they've done at a platform. And so if you think about it like this, they did get something from the project, even though by the time it has to reach production, you have to basically kill the project. And so if you think of it as a traditional IT project, you'd be like looking for someone to blame. Be like, why did you guys do it like this? Who took the decision to, like, why wasn't this stopped earlier? But that's the wrong way of thinking about it. The correct way of thinking about it, you're learning as fast as you can. You move to the newer architectures. You reevaluate. You could say, well, you don't re-engineer this project because it will still generate a positive return, and there's no added value to redo it. Or if you say the architecture is deprecated, I have parallel costs to run it in parallel, well, let's redo it. So all of that is very different to traditional IT projects. It's not creating a simple feature somewhere, or it's also different, honestly, from data projects. Even data projects were more like, okay, create dashboards, you create pipelines, you create some sort of data estates or warehouses. These things didn't have a shelf life of 6 months, right? With AI, you kind of have to treat it as options. and you kind of have to manage it as a portfolio of bets. So that certainly is, if not fully correct everywhere, at least directionally correct at most of the use cases and most of the enterprises that we're seeing.
Okay, that's definitely a sort of insight that should make a CFO stop and think. Do you want to talk about, in chapter 9, you talk about hidden taxes, so dual run costs, AI debt, entropy. How do organizations start seeing these taxes which are hidden and they're currently blind to?
Right. So the way the way for them to see them is, and by the way, this is a great reason why, you know, there's going to be enough jobs for people to deal with these kind of things, is because you do have, the execution is still on your side. You still have to execute. You still have to surface that information. You still have to put it in a way where you can track it and manage it. You know, all AI projects are managed in Excel. Full stop. There's an Excel list of someone saying, here's the 5 things we're putting money on. Maybe it's a good Excel, maybe it's a bad Excel, maybe it doesn't get updated, maybe it doesn't get tracked the same way. But one of the things that we saw as a problem is the lack of consistency in surfacing that information. So in order for you to understand the hidden costs, you have to have looked at them holistically. You have to understand where's your FTEs mapped to in IT and in the business ITs and shadow ITs. You know, where are you paying for licenses? Where are you paying for software? Where are you paying for vendors that pretend they're software, but they're really just consultants or integrators? Where are you paying for projects that there's a lot of sunk cost fallacy going on, and you just keep updating, and it just, you don't want to kill the project because you just invested already too much in it. You have to understand, if you're working on parallel platforms, maybe you're missing some of the some small investments on top, and then you can shut down the entire legacy infrastructure that you just someone told you it could never be shut down, it's forever there, nothing can be done, and then you're treating it as fixed, but actually you can start downscaling it. There's so many things that you just have not thought about, because in the classical management of IT portfolios, things have been moving slower. It's been the predictability. You know, remember the days where people used to do RFPs and, you know, take their time, select vendors. I mean, we're moving at warp speed right now. You know, the kind of decisions that need to be taken and taken sharply. We didn't have this speed before. I'm sorry to say, people were saying for a long time, oh, you know, everything is accelerating so fast. No, it wasn't. You could plan you still could do your microservices. Like, there was time. There's very the timelines are compressed, and the hidden taxes or the hidden costs is something it is incumbent on you as a data leader, as a CIO, as a CFO to surface, and to surface in a structured way that is also as honest and as holistic as possible, and not beholden to individual department politics, because in theory this thing doesn't exist. In practice, everyone knows there's a lot of it. So yeah, to answer your question simply, it's tough, and you have to do it, and you have to do it with as much financial rigor as possible.
So you talk about an AI capability ladder that's sequential. You mentioned this earlier. You also can't skip the rungs. So where are most enterprises actually sitting now, if we're honest about it?
Well, I can tell, I can speak for in the German-speaking world, right? So most enterprises are on rung 1 or 2. It's very early on, regardless of what their innovation budgets or slide decks say. They have pockets of automation, maybe some cool stuff.
Can you explain what the rungs are?
So the idea is that you can't skip, right? The ladder is sequential because each rung depends on the one below it, and skipping ahead is how we end up with impressive demos that never make it to production, right? So actually, it's, if you take a step back and say, well, that capability ladder is something you can skip, ideally. your existing architecture, your existing team, so it would be a complete chaos. You don't want to skip this. So the way you want to go about this is to modernize your stack, to simplify, to standardize, and to go about AI integration in a structured, sequential way. And you can have, let's say, if you have legacy systems that just get data in and out with CSVs, you can't do multi-agent tool calling with API. I mean, you can't just skip that part, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of how people are trying to shortcut it now, and that's maybe the correct thing, is to say, well, let's just build something that we'll call the agentic layer, and the agentic layer is going to connect all the legacy and modern parts of the landscape, and we essentially skip directly to the last part of the ladder where we could do everything. Yes, I think you should absolutely do that, but you should have a clear understanding of where you are in terms of maturity. And I think this is also one part of the honesty in communication with the boards that is probably not communicated in a way that it should, because everyone is trying their best to deliver on the AI projects. Everyone is trying to say, well, we're doing agents now, we're doing this and that, we're great. But the honest view would be, let's look at the entire setup. Let's look at all the processes. Let's see how the data flows. Let's see where we stand on the capability, on the AI capability ladder. If we're early in the maturity, let's see how we can fill those gaps and where we can decommission things to free up some budget for it. One of the things that we talk about in the book is strategic decommissioning as a discipline.
Yep.
That I think applies even more so now, where the innovation budgets to get onto a higher state of the ladder actually got squeezed out because your run costs and your parallel projects cost, they just ran out of control. I mean, the chaos and the noise in data and AI right now leaves many companies with just bloated IT budgets. Their IT costs are increasing without any meaningful, I mean, not everywhere, but you can't really see a clear connection between my IT costs actually increased by 20% and the company went so much better in these 5 dimensions that you can track on the balance sheet or on the P&L. So, yeah, I would approach this with the portfolio steering in mind and say, what's our portfolio? What's our maturity level? What's the feasibility of the things that we want to achieve with AI? And it's the meme that everyone just were discussing this, and then they bought Microsoft Copilot licenses. I mean, this is real. So yeah.
It's a bit like trying to build the fancy Dach terrace, the roof terrace, without having any foundations, right? If you're trying to leap straight into agentic AI.
Yes, but what I often found, this was a story that everyone in data, including us, was telling everyone for many years. Yeah, you got to build the foundations first. And if I'm a CFO, I'm like, when are these foundations built, man? We've been building foundations for 10 years already, and you still keep asking for more foundations, for more. I mean, at some point we want to have the terrace, right? And so it's a tough call. If you, in the book, we looked at this and said, well, if you have a run budget, if you have a normal projects budget, and if you have an innovation budget, just try, by being relentless in decommissioning unnecessary stuff, even to the point where non-critical business processes get changed significantly. You really push back to the business and say, you guys cannot have it like this anymore. You're going to have to deal with the workaround. We cannot upgrade it to the latest version. You have to simplify many things in order for us to lower the operating cost of IT in general. Then we can have some money to build out some of those agentic layer stuff. where we could do more automation, and where this could be like a more virtuous cycle of capability building, and adding value in the wider sense. It's a very tough discussion, and it's also part of the tough discussion because many of the IT budgets sit with business departments. They're not centrally managed with IT. So, but again, going back to my original point here was the execution is incumbent upon the leaders to surface those things. And let's be honest, CIOs have always done this. CDOs have always done this. This isn't something new. What's new is that with data and AI, there's quite a few quirks where these investments don't behave like traditional IT projects. With the traditional timeline, with the traditional architecture, with the traditional deployment schedule, it's just a bit different. And those differences are what we talk about in the book.
Okay, so the book starts off talking about Hannibal, and then a bit later we get into more kind of modern military speak with John Boyd's OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. But you make the point that the organizations only observe once there's already pain. So how do you make the loop deliberate rather than reacting to pain?
Right. So the idea is not. The idea always was you want to be. You want to be the idea was not to fail fast. I think this always struck me to fail fast. No, I don't want to fail at all. I think fail fast is a stupid way to think about it. The idea is to do a tighter loop than the competitors, to reevaluate quicker than the competitors, to switch strategies if needed, if evidence is presented, and to just get inside the competitions loop, which was the original idea by Colonel Boyd when designing this framework, actually for jet fighting dogfights, right?
Yeah.
So why is that relevant for AI? Well, I think what we describe in the book as the OODA loop for AI, which again, OODA loop, it has been applied to both management accounting, to both management science in general. This isn't something that we only dug in his paper from 1976 just recently, but I think it applies to AI much more than it applied to like the previous cycles because you just had more time.
Yeah.
Now you kind of really have to the people have to understand the observe or orient difference, deciding in a short loop and acting and do this with consistency and with a lack of organizational politics that they were just not used to in the same speed. I think that's the key element. I mean, imagine the following situation now. Everyone committed budgets to do projects now. And now, depending on who you listen to, there's like 40 to 50% chance to what experts are saying from the industry, from the frontier labs, of let's say September, October, Anthropic or OpenAI or someone else really releasing something that very closely resembles corporate AGI. So that isn't some magical, fancy, godlike stuff, but just simply a bot that sits on your console and can just run all of your apps with minimal to no supervision. You don't even have to do new software, really. I mean, it'll actually run your existing apps. And so all of a sudden, that cuts completely into the labor budgets, not into the IT budgets. I mean, even the SaaS vendors would be able to sell more SaaS because just bots would be using it. Not. I mean, what does that mean to you? What does that mean for your AI portfolio, where you were just developing things that all of a sudden you don't have to develop anymore? And there's just one example of thousands of examples that you could think of where this technology shift would just not enable you to run a traditional roadmap for many things. You'd still run it for your core systems of record. I mean, it doesn't change everything, but it changes a significant amount of stuff as far as your back office and your different departments with different business functions and how they use essentially computer every day. So we kind of want to gear the AI portfolios and the investments in these data and AI capabilities to be able to pivot as quickly as possible, to orient ourselves in what's happening as quickly as possible. And you kind of also see with the rise of Anthropic in the enterprise space, I mean, it went from like some nice chatbot to like every enterprise now knows, okay, if I want to do the best model for enterprise, I go to Anthropic. Maybe that'll shift. Maybe OpenAI is now they shifted their focus. Like they're doing this. The example is that they're dropping some of these video generating stuff just to focus on the enterprise, and the speed is amazing. We did not see this with traditional software as a service companies before, and so I think military, whenever there's so much uncertainty and so much at stake, you kind of have to go back to the literature and see what great military strategists use to win these battles.
Let's talk about how we talk to CFOs. So there's a whole chapter in there called Speaking Finance, which for many data people is maybe a little bit alien, but it's about turning data infrastructure investments into language that a CFO can understand. And ultimately the CFO's probably got pretty good control over the budgets there. What's the single most important translation a data leader needs to learn in order to talk to a CFO?
Right. So the single most important translation is to express data and investments in terms of portfolio return and not just costs and milestones. Okay. So traditional data leaders typically pitch in terms of technology capabilities or project milestones. We're going to be able to do this. After that, we're going to be able. Okay, great story. But finance people think in portfolios and risk-adjusted returns and in capital allocation, really. And so the moment you start saying this portfolio initiatives have an expected blended return of, let's say, X, and our risk portfolio has these Y and Z elements to it, I mean, all of a sudden, this is something that a CFO can much more easily identify with, can understand. A board can understand much more easily. And so I think there's a huge missing link between finance and data and AI. And honestly, I also see this not only from the data people cannot speak finance, but the finance people cannot speak data and AI too, right? It's, I think, a more particular kind of divide than the classic IT versus business. It's really in terms of language and framing, in terms of how you steer these projects versus how you don't do it. And the closest I can tell you that it resembles to me is this private equity type management versus, let's say, the traditional enterprise. Yep. Okay. I think with one of the theses that I have is that with the acceleration of AI right now, it almost is such that even profitable, large, established companies, from the individual perspective or from the department lead perspective or from like the IT perspective, all of a sudden resemble much more closely what unsuccessful or troubled assets companies that get bought by PE experience. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, it's the accountants that come in and slash everything to the bare bone, expect a 20% year cost reduction year after year until it plateaus and nothing can be done anymore. And in terms of capabilities building, expect very clear mapping to business metrics for new investments. And so is this really the rigor that you're seeing at most enterprises? Absolutely not. Not a chance, not a snowball's chance in hell. Yep. Unless you have some sort of a stress situation, a crisis situation, and then that happens by default. But in the absence of it, even with healthy balance sheets, with healthy profits, with healthy everything, all of a sudden, with the newest things in AI, you're kind of running into this type of thinking to be successful, because costs can be slashed actually a lot, and capability can be increased, but it requires a very deliberate and difficult transition that I think requires the finance language rather than the data and AI or the CTO capability or the architect capability language.
Great. So what should somebody who's read the book do first? Like, what's the most immediate thing that somebody could do tomorrow as a data leader to make a difference to the investments they're trying to make?
Right. So what I would suggest is you should audit your own portfolio, right? If you start managing other people's portfolios or discussing about this, you should look at your own stuff. Not the entire organizations at first, just whatever's within your department, division, responsibility, just your portfolio. And map every initiative that you're responsible for against the actual business value to the best of your ability. It's very important to consider all sorts of costs, not just like, okay, those are my token costs or my compute costs, and that's about it. Just the FTE cost, the vendor cost, like everything you can imagine that is tangent to it, map it. And essentially come up with an aggressive plan about how to free up capacity, how to cancel things that aren't really moving meaningful needles. And it's a very tough discussion, I think.
Yep.
It's a very tough discussion if you kind of cannibalize your own portfolio before someone else does it for you, kind of a situation. And say, let's just relentlessly focus on things that add value, and we could basically cancel anything that we don't need. Yep. And that means, of course, the toughest discussion. What do we do with vendors, with FTEs, with systems, with teams? Very tough. But unless we're in a situation right now where unless those things have a very clear reason to exist, they should be challenged, adjusted, and people moved on to more productive things. And one of the I just want to say something. In this discussion now, I've been talking a lot about cost and slashing cost and cutting cost. And I mean, this isn't hugely popular with anyone, right? Mm. No one is saying, oh, that sounds so inspiring. Let's just all cut costs. And if we can cut our own costs, then even better. This is beyond the point. The point is that you need to cut costs to free up capacity and capability to do some of the things that would increase everything else. Customer satisfaction, revenue, product capabilities, I mean, anything really. So they kind of go hand in hand. I see and talk with people from Silicon Valley and the large companies, and also spoke recently with Shahar from who was at Meta for many years. And yes, you hear that some of these organizations have been bloated with a lot of capacity, over hiring, over complexity, over everything. That doesn't have to be your company with your 15 people IT that's struggling, and everyone is working, overtime. So you can't really say let's cut them and remove cost. But it kind of brings you to the discussion of what people were doing within your portfolio, yeah, to add value. And I think starting there, auditing your own portfolio first, and then kind of taking this approach towards more finance grade data in our portfolio is certainly what I would advise, right? So,
and so when you talk about auditing your own portfolio, you have conveniently got a new tool that you've released alongside the book on vainloop.com, which people should probably check out. They can also find and access the book, so Finance Grade Data and AI Products, which especially talks about everything we've just been discussing, on vainloop.com. And I think I might be doing another interview with Mario next week, in which case maybe we can dive a bit more into product. Although I see Mario has decided to switch careers and is now a pilot. So let's see if he decides to be a pilot for more than one day or not.
Well, I was just commenting on his profile picture with an AI-generated Boeing 737 and A320 cockpit, which is like, Mario, this is AI hybrid architecture at play, right? Fly-by-wire combined with non-fly-by-wire. No, jokes aside, the idea for this is we wrote the book, and Mario is really, together with David and others, developing the product. is to say, you want to have, first of all, you want to manage your AI portfolio with AI. You don't want to manage it with Excel or with Excel and a Claude plugin. You really want to manage it with a proper structure layer for strategic decisioning, because the stakes are too high for you to continue to do it as before, right? You really don't want to be sitting in a meeting taking decisions on rebalancing a multi-million projects portfolio, and someone says, oh, let me take that question and I'll come back to you in a few days, right? You really want to see the quantified part of the qualitative value drivers tracked somewhere, and essentially the whole book framework is now in the product, right? Yep. So it's everyone can try it for free, or if you want to try it with full feature set, let us or me or Mario know. The point is you really want to steer your AI portfolio with AI and track and track it with a context layer that builds the entire complexity of your organization in it on a high level, your data and your AI capabilities, with very detailed questionnaires about where you stand and what's specific to your company. And you really want to get that use case list out of Excel. You can upload it in Excel. You can upload documents in Excel, and then you have basically a Claude Opus 1.6 layer on top of it within the tool that you can interact with it, which is actually very interesting, because it also kind of it's a very weird effect. You support and automate some of that CDO consulting work, but because of the gaps you find and the things you really want to execute on in the company, there's a ton of work that shows up. So it's a very reckoning moment for everyone that uses it.
Cool. Well, speaking as the CEO of a company that is one of the investments that a data team needs to propose to a CFO, and as somebody that struggled with that conversation, I find the book really, and also as a kind of MBA type, I find the book really helpful to help me help my kind of internal champions position themselves and position the investments internally. So thanks very much, Ivo. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks, Stephen. Always happy to chat with you. And also, I think you guys at TillerS are onto something great. I think you're solving a problem that is becoming more important with AI, which relates to lightweight, proper entity resolution. I think this is very central to companies being able to utilize agentic process to automate based on high quality, master data and high quality entities. So yeah, great to see that you guys are doing such important work too.
Thanks, Ivo. It's very kind of you to say so. Right,
cheers.
Bye now. Bye.